So, watching the film, and I'm like, oh no. And then there's a scene, right? And no spoiler alerts because the whole film is spoiled. It's this scene where the king of this empire, whatever the case is, gets assassinated, right?
Is that where everybody's got the musicians are playing in the background?
And they're still playing while somebody's getting murdered, right? It's like, oh, did you see that blood? And, what? I have never in my life decided that no. Every Zack Snyder film now that I've ever watched, I want a refund on those films.
3, 2, 1.
Where shall we start? Let's start with the cinema stuff real quick.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so because you sent the himbo auteur video, and I completely ignored the auteur word. I was just like, okay, cool, and I watched it, and I thought it was quite good actually, very very concise, well researched. Guy.
Yeah, this is the video by, I don't want to forget his name, Patrick H. Williams, right?
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
So, and as I'm going through the video, certain words trigger me. So, trigger word is like it's a me generation thing. So, the word Nolan, the name Nolan showed up, and then that Warner Brothers relationship between Nolan and then Zack Snyder. I was like, oh, I'm seeing the pattern. I'm seeing how things kind of came to be. And I was like, this is very, very interesting. This makes total sense in terms of how, that man's career has kind of unfolded over the years. And, I've been a fan of his films for a few of them. I was just like, look, I know what I get from his films. I enjoy them. And yes, he has a very, specific visual style, which works, right? And then another word showed up, or was a phrase, essentially. 10 years shooting music videos and commercials. And I was like, oh no. Oh my goodness. And by the time I get to the end of the video, it made so much sense because he's an advertising director, and he has not strayed from that whatsoever. Even if he tries, it's still in there, in his DNA, his core. I'm like, okay, fine. I get it. I can see why the studio would want to apply that to certain films, and it worked for certain films, right? Watchmen, 300. I was like, okay. And then it got weird in certain places. I have a DVD of Sucker Punch, right?
Yes.
I got it at a DVD bin. I was so happy, right? Because it's got some behind the scenes. You can learn a lot. And it's not for everyone, but there was something there just in terms of this is just weird. This is like everybody went right, this guy went left. And in the video, he also mentions casting Oscar Isaacs, and I was like, you see, I was right. There's something here. I can also say some nice things about Zack Snyder. Mm-hmm. Cool. The video ends, and I'm like, all right, I have enough information and a little bit of inspiration to watch Rebel Moon Part 2, the director's cut. And already there, I'm like, no. Why is it called a director's cut? It's a Netflix film. What's going on here? No. Am I missing something? This is happening in the back of my mind. That dialogue is just on the whole time. And I start watching, and already I'm like, okay, I know what this is going to be. Let's not go into this is a terrible movie. I saw the first one, so I'm not interested in expecting anything good from this film.
So you watched the first one, the director's cut, or did you watch the studio Netflix cut?
I watched the first one, studio Netflix. Again, I don't. What is this director's cut? It doesn't matter. No. It's confetti at this point. It's a movie, director's cut, and pops. No. That's wrong. It's wrong. That marketing strategy is wrong. It's hurtful and misleading. Stop it.
Yes.
In my opinion, right? So, watching the film, and I'm like, oh no. And then there's a scene, right? And no spoiler alerts because the whole film is spoiled. It's this scene where the king of this empire, whatever the case is, gets assassinated, right?
Is that where everybody's got the musicians are playing in the background?
And they're still playing while somebody's getting murdered, right? It's like, oh, did you see that blood? And yeah, that scene. Again, because you ask yourself, you're like, wait, are they still playing? Right? Okay. Fine.
It's basically the scene from The Hot Chick where Adam Sandler's playing the drums. Do you remember that scene? Where he's like, oh, I didn't know you could hear me. You can hide your weed in there.
No, I need to remember that. The Hot Chick.
Yeah.
Okay,
with Rob Schneider. Yeah.
Oh man, I have to check my memory banks. Rob Schneider, my goodness. So anyways, and the scene, well, the stabbing and stuff, or the action scenes and the music comes to a halt because, the king's there and what's his name? The guy who's trying to become the new king. He basically turns on Sophia's character.
Yes.
All right. What's her character name? Korra. Yeah, I remember.
Althaleus, or whatever it is.
Yeah. But Korra, I remember Korra because of Avatar, the second one.
That's right.
And she had a similar haircut to that cartoon as well, which algorithms. Anyways, so she's now like being called a traitor, right? She's just out of the blue. He's like, yo, get her. She a traitor. She done took out the king. Blah blah blah. I'm like, what? Right? And then she starts shooting people, and she runs out of bullets or laser pellets, or I don't know what the ammunition is called on those guns. And she runs out, and she's pointing the gun at him, right? The guy who wants to be king, Baron or something, whatever. I don't know. I don't care. I'm like, okay, so now she's either going to be arrested or something's going to happen, like so that the story can move forward. And she turns around, and there are these two guards on the floor that she took out from her previous shooting. She picks up an assault rifle, ne? Which has ammunition, ne?
Yes.
Now there's like soldiers within that room. They didn't do nothing because I'm assuming they didn't have guns as well. And the Baron guy doesn't have guns. And the music band doesn't have guns. So she's the only one with a gun and ammunition. Ne? I'm like, okay, shoot him. That's it. No. She turns around towards the door. The door's open. She shoots two other guards. I'm like, okay, take those two other guards. And instead of turning around and shooting that guy who just basically announced that she's a traitor and she's betrayed him, she runs away.
Yeah.
Huh? What? No. I have never in my life decided that no. Every Zack Snyder film now that I've ever watched, I want a refund on those films. That was BS on the highest level. You can't. $166 million. No, give him more.
Is that what the budget was on both or each?
And I'm not sure whether it was both. I know for part 2, I came across 166 million for that particular one. I'm like, oh, okay, no, give him more, guys. No, please. That way you can refund me. Man.
Oh my goodness.
After Rebel Moon, I completely forgot that I actually wanted to mention certain aspects of Nolan and that relationship with Warner Brothers. Because as a studio, I can understand why they need specific filmmakers for their films and just how it got so polluted, right? In the auteur video, they mentioned that obviously Nolan, during the process of making The Dark Knight, him and David S. Goya kind of hit a wall. So they decided...
this is The Dark Knight Rises, correct?
I'm not sure if it was Dark Knight Rises or The Dark Knight.
It's Dark Knight Rises,
Yeah, but so, no man, is it not The Dark Knight? So writing The Dark Knight. Or either one. Okay, we'll do our research. Either one, they hit a wall, and David S. Goya, just to get over that writer's block, writes Man of Steel.
That's right.
Correct? I'm like, okay, that was very nice. I like that type of creativity, those unexpected happy magic accidents.
Right. Yeah, I believe I believe the way that the story goes is that they were stuck, and basically Nolan turns around and goes, "Hey, I've got a good take on Superman," and he's like, "Well, we're trying to fix Batman over here, but cool, give me the take." And he's like, "What about Superman as an immigrant?" And he goes, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "What if he was like, if we treat it as an immigrant story?" And David Oyskoya goes, "Tell me more." And I think they go to lunch. And basically Nolan kind of gives him the kind of take of like a world that resists the alienness of Superman. So he feels alienated most of the time. And then David Oyskoya goes away and kind of writes that little, goes and writes Man of Steel, at least the first draft of that.
And it worked, because I always thought it was like a traveler theme, a nomad theme.
Yeah, I liked it.
I very much enjoyed it.
A lot.
Yes, right? And now, traversing through the auteur video again, certain things become revealed. So remember Zack Snyder's inspiration in terms of that King Arthur film that they mentioned, which I'm going to go watch.
It demystifies him quite a bit. That's what I like about the video, because look, for me, I used to kind of do what the internet does quite a bit, which is like bash Zack Snyder quite a bit, and sometimes unfairly. And it was funny because I was listening to him on the Joe Rogan podcast. I stopped by this place called Microgram, which is in like Parkhurst, where I go and pick up DVDs. And I went to go sift through it, and I picked up Tales of the Black Freighter, which is kind of like the sort of supplementary DVD document, right? Where Jared Butler kind of voices that animated section that's in the Watchmen comic. Well, it's the comic within a comic within Watchmen, right?
All right.
And I was like, oh, this is a haunt. So I go up to the counter, and the guy goes, "Oh, you're a Snyder fan?" And I was like, "Dude, I'm kind of on the fence, but I do like Watchmen. I do like Man of Steel, and I really like the graphic novel Watchmen. Like, it was one of my favorite books by Alan Moore.
Yes.
And I really wanted to try to sort of get that complete view of what Snyder was trying to do. So I wanted to watch Tales of the Black Freighter. So he's like, "Oh, I believe we have a Blu-ray that includes this in the movie." And I was like, that would be great if I didn't already own the Blu-ray. So I catched up, and then he was the one that said to me, "You know what you should do? You should watch this Alex H. Williamson." And he actually wrote it on a post-it for me. And he was like, "Go and watch this about Snyder." It demystified Snyder for me. Not that it made me a fan, but it kind of broke it down for me. And what's interesting is the Rogan podcast added another dimension where I think this will also kind of help in terms of us processing Rebel Moon in a certain way, not in the sense of making it a better movie, but just kind of understanding the man. Because I think that we wanted to start off with kind of like a Nolan appreciation podcast, which then ultimately morphed into a Zack Snyder, for lack of a better word, critique. But in the Rogan podcast, Zack Snyder talks about being a huge fan of heavy metal. I don't know if you're familiar with the sort of heavy metal. I think it's like a comic book.
The genre or the movie, the animated movie?
The animated movie.
I've seen that, yes.
Yeah, which is like highly sort of like phantasmagoric, like highly sexualized.
It's wild.
It's wild. And when you understand that that's his origin point, and you watch something like Rebel Moon, it's like, oh, I get it. No. Because Rebel Moon, what it feels like to me, at least, is as if Zack Snyder ate like a bunch of Star Wars, ate a bunch of like Lord of the Rings, and ate a whole bunch of heavy metal, and then shout out Rebel Moon. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And again, look, it's like I like that you mentioned critique, because that was not the idea. I'm not interested, because I've come across a few people who've watched what's his last zombie film, Army of the Dead, right?
Yes.
With Dave Bautista, that enjoyed that, and I watched it and I was like, look, I know it's not for me. It kind of felt like Fast 7, where some of the jokes I felt like was just like, look, it's kind of cheesy. If you laugh, that's great. I know what I enjoy from Snyder, so his original Dawn of the Dead. I'm still a fan of that regardless, but like you said, he's been demystified now, where I can go, hold up, you do this for almost all your films. You literally go, adult content and people must die.
Which is crazy, because I remember when The Dark Knight was out and they asked Zack Snyder about it, and he was like, I don't think that The Dark Knight is dark. He's like, if I were to do Batman would get raped in prison or something like that.
I remember something like that. Me and my older brother, we had a laugh, because when we heard the story, we basically imagined being Warner Brothers executives and hearing this idea, and at which point you go, no, look, there's a lot of money on the line here. I'm not even going to argue with you, but are you out of your mind? just stop. No, we heard you. Go have lunch. Go make your phone. Just don't come to us with these ideas like this. No. I'm with you there. I remember also, I'm not sure who said it, but essentially, so the ending of Man of Steel. Yeah. When I started to ask myself and also my brother and a few other people as to why Nolan isn't more involved in the Man of Steel projects anymore, and it kind of came down, maybe, I'm not sure, I don't have the specifics, as to that ending. He just couldn't agree with that ending, because obviously it was still within that superhero and specifically these characters and their code, right, of not killing people. And, in the video where he basically says that, no, Superman, he's not saving people. That fight scene between him and Zod is just catastrophe caused by, whether it's his lack of skill, he's just new to his powers, and he's facing an adversary that is obviously well-versed in warfare and combat. That's how I kind of rationalized it when watching Man of Steel. Now that somebody shows it up,
And look, sorry to interrupt you. The third act of that film is arguably the worst part of that film. The first two acts are lovely, and look, Michael Shannon is absolutely brilliant, and I think that Michael Shannon's performance really leans into your interpretation of that particular third act. This idea that he is trying and failing against an overpowered villain. Well, a villain that's much more powerful than him, who wants to kind of create that chaos. And I think that's one of the only films where I actually could hear the collateral damage. Because often in like superhero films, the buildings come down and you don't actually see the devastation. And I think that's one of the only films where I was actually like, no, you can actually hear the people screaming when those buildings come down. You can actually hear the horror of it all. And I think the problem there is like where Lois and Superman kiss amongst that.
Oh, that was hilarious.
Amongst that devastation. Because I think that's sometimes where Zack Snyder gets tone deaf, because he goes for the moment as opposed to the story.
Yeah.
And when you watch Rebel Moon, that's very, very apparent. He's like, you're going for the moment. And that moment that you just described, where there's an assault rifle on the floor, he goes for the moment. And you're like, but hold on a second. Logically, something doesn't compute here. Because even like in the director's cut, so I haven't watched the director's cut of part 2.
What is the difference? Can you explain that to me? Now I'm very curious.
Okay, cool. So I've only watched the director's cut of part 1. I'm yet to watch the director's cut of part 2 because it took me a whole week to get through part 1. Because look, I didn't want to be undeniably cruel while watching this. I wanted to watch it for its own merits. But having watched it, I came out very frustrated.
Merits?
Because yes, like the thing is that I watched the first one, I watched the second one of the like Netflix cut or whatever, and then Zack Snyder went on a whole media campaign which was like, these are completely different films. There's a lot more like story to it, because even the Netflix versions are incomplete as far as the story goes. You're like, hold on a second, like you guys didn't complete the story, so you're saying there's a part 3 somewhere out there? So then when they started advertising the director's cuts, I was like, okay, this is foolish, but okay, maybe you complete the story in the director's cuts, which really confounded me. And then having watched the first part of the director's cut, I turned to Melissa right after I finished it, and I said, I need to rant for a second. And she was like, why? I told you not to watch this. And I was like, because her and I watched the first 2 together. And she was like, I don't think those were good movies. And I was like, I'm one to agree, but I'm going to hold my opinion until I watch the director's cuts. Because there's a few director's cuts which are superior than the actual studio cuts. Like, one of my favorite director's cuts is the Kingdom of Heaven director's cut by Ridley Scott, which is fundamentally a much more robust, much more complete, much more satisfying film. It's beautiful in that sense. And then having watched sort of the Zack Snyder's Justice League, which I think actually benefited from being released like 3 years after the studio version. I think that he learned the lessons and the responses from the studio version and then made a different film than what he even initially intended.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I felt like, and I still feel like, in terms of this director's cut, it's just a horrible trolling or marketing. Where
100%.
So we got the Zack Snyder's cut from Justice League, which again turned out well. You know, it kind of reversed a lot of the comments and criticisms that people had about Justice League, and you kind of like, yeah, Zack, come on, man, that's good. Yeah, you did all right, man. Yeah, we appreciate it.
I mean, this sounds a bit better, but I remember you and I having a conversation after the Justice League came out, and I think you had just watched Alien Covenant, funny enough. So, you know, there's very much a Ridley Snyder aura that's percolating around this conversation. But I remember it wasn't actually when Justice League had come out. It's when Zack Snyder actually left Justice League after the death of his daughter. And I remember being very conscious of that because I'd watched Batman v Superman. I'd watched his ultimate cut of that. And the problem is that everything that was problematic in the studio cut of Batman v Superman was amplified in the ultimate cut. It wasn't repaired. And I remember very hesitantly being quite gleeful that he was leaving Justice League, only to learn that obviously he had left under extraneous circumstances. Then obviously when his Justice League came out, which I was a huge champion of because I wanted to see him fulfill that vision after hearing, sort of all the, studio politics involved. Watched that film and went, yeah, okay, cool. I give you applause, sir. And especially because I think, and it's horrible to say, but I think that film actually benefits from the tragedy. And this is what I even said to the clerk at Microgram when I picked up that DVD. I said that Zack Snyder's Justice League actually has the bleakness, and it is a meditation on the loss of his daughter, August, right? Yeah. Even to the point that the ending credits is his daughter's favorite song, which is Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, right?
Yeah.
Even the trailers had that in the actual marketing of the trailer.
I did not know that.
But what Netflix learned from that and what he took out of it and what they applied to Rebel Moon is unfortunately this methodology of using studio cuts as very expensive focus test groups to create different versions of movies. So they did the Justice League thing. They literally did the Justice League thing.
Yeah.
And when you watch the director's cut of the first part, some of my points of critique of the first one, as far as visual points of critique, because sometimes when I watch Zack Snyder movies, I don't try to be intentionally cruel around the story because he's a beautiful visual artist. But even the studio cut of Rebel Moon, I started to go, but there's a lot of details here that don't make sense. A good example of that is like Cora or Arthur-Leus, whatever her name is, smacks up Ed Skrine's teeth in the film, right?
Yeah.
And then the very next cut is him with a full mouth of teeth. And I was like, why go for the detail of the teeth and then show him to have a full mouth of teeth? So in the director's cut, when I saw that he had digitally removed Ed Skrine's teeth, I was like, this is not a director's cut. This is a more complete version of the studio cut. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not like there are sections or scenes other than perhaps like a very gratuitous sex scene, which goes on for way too long. I actually fast-forwarded it, to be honest. I was like, it means nothing.
Man, like, this actually points to him being an ad man or an ad director.
Yeah.
Right, where, you know, it's like a safe zone for him, and it works for the studios. They're like, yo, change this, he changes it. That's, you know, so now this himbo auteur, I'm just like, why would you even use that word?
What does himbo mean? Please explain that.
I don't know. In the video, it's basically, he's like a high school gym coach who also teaches history. So, you know, and he makes films. And so it's like, oh, okay, yeah, you know, if this guy had to make films, these are the type of films you get. And you kind of like, okay, yeah. Because, I mean, he does have kind of like, he has a reputation for his films. You know, he has a style. It's Zack Snyder. And you can't help but like, yo, man, you did this. This is who you are. Like, it's followed you before Man of Steel and after Man of Steel as well. Where, you know, even with Rebel Moon, it's still, you feel like it's a Zack Snyder film. Like, he has that. You know, a lot of directors don't have that. They don't have that, I don't want to call it a voice, but that style, that signature. And Zack has a signature, which just happens to be, you know, this signature, which is kind of dumbfounding. I'm just like, what? I mean, I just remembered. Korra, I'm watching this. I'm watching it, and I'm like, does she speak? I mean, like, she has very, very little lines of dialogue.
Yeah.
You know, if I have to be, you know, kind of, I don't know what the word is, but if I'm going to be silly about the film, it felt like, we need some exposition here before we get to slow-mo. Let's get some more slow-mos here, and then some exposition. And then slow-mo, exposition, slow-mo, exposition, yes. And then characters will speak, right, if it's not exposition. And I'm like, but then, Korra, why is she the lead? Because there are certain scenes where she like yells out and screams, you know, because it's an emotional scene. But you're like, and it clicked. I'm like, yo, you don't speak in this movie.
Yeah.
Why? And then it goes back to, oh, this is an ad. But an ad for what?
An ad for the movie that you think you should be watching.
Oh man, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we can definitely critique, but this is like, there were certain scenes where, specifically that one scene where I'm just like, no man, here's my card, here's my 2 weeks notice. That caught me off guard, because I mean, I knew going into it that you know, it might not be the best experience for me in my particular taste and my expectations. However, come on, bro.
You know what? Here's the thing. For a while there, after Army of the Dead, I sort of thought that perhaps I am not the audience for Zack Snyder. And I know that there are people out there who are calling these sets of films like a masterpiece and those types of, you know, there's a lot of adjectives being thrown around, and I think that there's a lot of there's a huge dichotomy that's happening on the internet, right? You're either for Snyder or against Snyder, and I think it started to be birthed with the like release the Snyder cut, restore the Snyderverse, that type of space, right? And I think it's kind of gotten out of hand because even Zack Snyder himself has fallen prey to it.
Yes, I sense that.
That's what I sense, because it's the most Snyder movie ever Snydered.
Don't like believe your own hype, yeah.
That's the thing, and it's just like he's not pivoting away from it; he's pivoting towards all of those things. And I understand what you're saying in that, you know, I believe that he has a voice. I really do, and I really sort of, as a director, you know, as filmmakers ourselves, we champion other filmmakers. Like, we want them to win, right?
Yes.
Like, even the ones that we disagree with, right? So that's why when like Release the Snyder Cut was out there, I was on the bandwagon of, yeah, man, like FWB, release the Snyder Cut because I want to see what his vision was.
Yes, me too.
I want to see that fully articulated in the manner and the way in which he wanted it articulated, because I don't like studio interference. I've always been a person that's been quite aware of when studios have messed films up. You know, there was a huge part of sort of an era where Tom Rothman was running 20th Century Fox, right? And studio interference became like a huge problem during that time. You know, and it messed up a lot of movies, and a lot of the times directors saw their vision being changed. I think one of the victims thereof was our very own South African Gavin Hood when he was directing X-Men Origins Wolverine. You know, studio interference was rife back then in 20th Century Fox. And it never produced anything of merit, you know. And then very similarly at Sony Pictures, if I'm not mistaken, there was another executive, which actually has since, she's actually been producing quite good films. But during that era that she was around, studio interference ruined a lot of Sony Pictures. I mean, the Avi Arad stuff during Sam Raimi's Spider-Man stuff, Spider-Man trilogy as well, was like a huge point of contention. In actual fact, you know, studio interference could be to blame for Spider-Man 3 having a sort of less than coherent storyline because of the, you know, sort of the segue or the inclusion of things like Venom in that story when Sam Raimi didn't understand that character, nor did he like the character. But it was Avi Arad who was like, no, you got to put him in there, right? So, like, when it does come, but the biggest problem that I have is like we corporatize everything that used to be like, how should I put this? That used to be kind of punk rock. So back in the day, like when you heard of a director's cut, it was kind of like a punk rock in that you would get, right? It's like you would get the normal DVD, but then you would get the director's cut because you wanted to see the director's vision. And that has now been corporatized to the point that now, like, unfortunately, Snyder has become known as the Snyder Cut guy. And I don't think that's helpful.
And it's only 2 films, to be honest. It's like, it's like, no, like, it's, I don't want to say clickbait, but I do feel like it's more trolling. I feel like as you know, as somebody who appreciates the work that goes into films and appreciates when you watch a good film, you know, you don't want to be kind of, bamboozled into something that doesn't exist. You know, like the director's, again, for what? He made a film. He just, and with Army of the Dead, right? I wasn't the biggest fan. Watched it, and I was like, okay, cool. He made a film. You know, this is him coming back after the Snyder Cut. I don't know if it was before the Snyder Cut or afterwards, but you know, that was his film afterwards. And I watched it. I was like, okay, he's working again. Great. Yeah. Right. To the point even where there's that one character in Army of the Dead that got a spin-off. And I was like, why would they give this guy a spin-off, right? Like he garnered all this attention and positive response from that character that they gave him his own film. And that film was like, it was done quickly, in my opinion. I mean, I'm not saying that it was done like in 2 weeks. It was, you know, and I watched that film as well. And I had a similar feeling. I was like, you know what? I'm kind of glad that I watched this. I'm kind of glad that from Army of the Dead, you know, one of these actors and other people, you know, another film was birthed. And I was like, you know what? Zack, you did good with Army of the Dead. Look what you did. Look at what you did, right? That's good. I like that.
Like right off into the sunset, knowing full well that, you know, now you can introduce us to whatever else is in your mind. Like, I would love to see him do like a heavy metal.
Oh man, like, it's so funny because now there are these rumors. I think they're rumors. I'm not sure. Where it's floating around that obviously Rebel Moon is going to be like a franchise now, you know, and he's going to be he's going to get more films specifically for Rebel Moon, you know, so that they can flesh out the story. Sorry. So, you know, you can get like a better understanding. I don't know out of this. And you're like, no, don't give him, you know, a franchise. I mean, sorted. What I would like to do, what I would like to see, what I think, because in the video, he speaks about the auteur video. He speaks about the Owlful, something about the Guardians or something, blah 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 blah.
Guardians of Gahul.
Yes, there we go. Thank you. I've watched Guardians of Gahul. I was actually quite interested in it because it was a Zack Snyder film. I'm like, oh, Zack Snyder's doing animation, and I watched it. I didn't think much of it at the time. I didn't know how to make sense of that film. However, I was like, oh, he made an animated film. Oh yeah, and I believe that was the film that he needed to actually secure Man of Steel. So make something that, you know, is kind of family friendly, and then you get Man of Steel. I'm like, okay, that's fair. I can see why he got Man of Steel, because, you know, he made an animated film. And somewhere along the line in the back of my head, I'm like, okay, here's what I actually want to see. If he can do a fully animated film, right, and people trust him and he can go crazy with his code of adult content and violence, people must, you know, die. I'd like to see him get like an episode on Love, Death, and Robots. I think.
Ooh, that'd be amazing.
I think that for me would, you know, bring me back into the Snyder WhatsApp group or Discord, whatever you call it. Yeah.
Yeah, the fanboy club.
Yeah. Because now Rebel Moon. Oh man, my goodness.
Look, I'm gonna give the second part a watch just so that, you know, I don't. Here's the thing, like, I don't like to be cruel. It's just not. It's not within my being. It makes me feel bad, and I always feel like I always want to be excited for films, and I get let down by films and I get disappointed by films. But that's just that's part of the course, right? But here's the thing that really started percolating in my head once I finished the director's cut.
You're in for a treat.
Oh my God. I feel scared, Charles. Here's the thing, right? I believe, though, because I'm starting to see a particular sickness set into both mediums that both you and I love, which is both filmmaking and video games. We talked about the death of cinematic curiosity, right?
Right.
Over the course of these podcasts, right up to episode 4. And that we could term like AAA cinema, right? If you'd allow me just to use that kind of metaphor.
Yeah.
Right, it's AAA cinema. Right, it's cinema that bangs on all the different spaces and it does what cinema is supposed to, right? Even the blockbuster stuff, right? Because I'm not seeing a lot of blockbusters lately. Although you might see a resurgence of this, and someone could argue like things like, you know, sort of the new Bad Boys, Deadpool and Wolverine, Twisters. These are the sort of comeback of blockbusters, and I really hope so. But I believe that Netflix is to filmmakers what Fortnite is to game developers.
Okay, I like that.
The reason why I say that is because it's like this free to access content type of paradigm, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, we should love Rebel Moon because we get it for quote unquote free, right? We're not paying for a ticket. We're not paying for the DVD in order to watch it. So therefore, the litmus test or the barometer at which we measure its quality or success has to be lowered, right? Right. It's like if you log on to like a Tubi or like any one of these AVOD platforms, like even EVOD or whatever the case is, immediately you got to lower your standards in order to ingest the content.
Right, yeah.
And every now and then you'll kind of get a gem, right? You'll be like, oh, what's this filmmaker doing? And yeah, this is lovely, and you take that, right? But what it is that it's kind of like going onto YouTube and finding like a really great film on YouTube, or going onto YouTube and finding a really high quality fan film on YouTube.
Right.
So it's probably just a level above that. Because back in the day, right, you'd go to your video game store or you'd go to your DVD store and you'd pick up a physical copy of a movie. And that action alone made whatever content you're about to, or whatever piece of entertainment which you're about to engage with, the stock of that entertainment went up, at least in terms of like a mind share within your head.
Oh, okay. I like where you're going with this, because you talk about stocks, and you mentioned AAA filmmaking, and this is a very nice segue into the gaming conversation we want to have about AAA games, where the idea of AAA games actually comes from the finance industry, right? Credits, where if something's rated AAA, that means it's of top quality, high class. You can invest in it. Not you can purchase a game or you can purchase a ticket. No, you can invest in this AAA product. And what's important to understand about this AAA product is that it's not the actual game. It's not the actual experience. What the AAA product is it's a private equity product, right? So now you've got people pulling in their money. So let's say you and I and another person, we've got some several millions that we can use to acquire certain things. And what AAA does is, they buy studios, right? Gaming studios. I think this is happening in Hollywood as well, where the studios themselves, in order to stay afloat, have had private investors, private equity, come and buy parts of the company, right? But they don't stick around until, let's say, one good movie is good, because they've bought the whole studio, which means all the IP that comes to the studio, right? So you and I, we've bought a piece of Warner Brothers or Fox for, let's say, 10 million, right? Now, we don't actually care if a movie does well and that movie makes money, because our money is in the studio. And before even that movie comes out and hits ticket sales, for us to make a profit, we're going to sell our stake in the studio for that profit. And how do we do that? We go, oh, look, we are part of said studio. This studio made this movie made this much money, and you get all these new investors going, yeah, all right, here's 20 million I will give you, and you and I have made 10 million. How nice is that?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And this translates to the gaming industry as well, whereas now you and I, we're in the sunset now. We are enjoying life. We made a profit. However, in that time we were making a profit. In order to get these investors to be excited, we were like, yo, we need that new film now. We need that Wolverine film now, right? And we market the hell out of that Wolverine film. And we push the production company to make sure that film comes out as soon as possible. No, but films, they have a process. And, there are people involved in making that, and, they have their process. You can't just, pump out a really, really good Wolverine film, right? Quotation marks. So we do that. We market and we sell, we push this film. New investors come in, we make our money, and we're gone. Then, obviously, the wheels start to get loose because this film is not ready for consumption or for release, right? But the money's already been put in, and it's not the 10 million that we put in. It's now the 20 million that other people have put in. And, oh boy. So now this thing has to finish at the very least, or break even. But it's not good enough, and there's not enough time, and there's a date that everybody is expecting certain things from. And then that date shows up. That movie has to be released, and the movie is not good, and the movie doesn't make money. Now, people lose money, people lose jobs, and the product itself, which you sold based off of, it's part of the studio. Here, come on. That product also gets a hit, because now you go, hey, I don't want to watch another Wolverine film. That last one really just, you mentioned our friend, not friend, but our our fellow filmmaker Gavin Hood and his Wolverine film, and you're like, this makes so much sense. Not that it's good sense, but this also translates now the gaming industry, where the same thing is happening in the gaming industry, where a lot of big money guys, private equity, have bought up studios after studio after studio, collected the studios, and then they're like, yo, we're the guys who own the studio, and this studio made this game, and this game made this much money. You know, how would you like to be a part of this? You like that? You like that? And in between that time where they're like, ooh, tell us more. How do we make money from these games and the studio? So you go, look, we've got this great franchise. It's been successful maybe 12 years ago. So we're gonna give you another one of those, you know. They're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So they put in even more money. And then like in terms of revenue stream, this is where you now start to see all these microtransactions and all this other strange marketing, pre-orders, where they're just like, hey, buy the game now, because it's this franchise, right? And then all that money is going in there, and now it's a lot of money that's involved in the studio. But then you look at the game studios themselves, right? Which they're going, hold up, but we can't make games like this. This is not what made these games popular in the first place. You know, there's a certain process, there's a certain timeline, and then there's also a certain respect that you need to give to the players, the consumer, you know, the people who actually are going to give you that return on the investment. And it's completely ignored because, you know, that initial 10 million that we put in, we're about to cash out before even the wheels fall off. And it's grown and it's grown. And I think there's a video that actually alludes to this, whereby in 2020, because, you know, at home entertainment, basically everybody's inside, you know, and they needed Netflix, they needed internet, and they needed games. And it was a need. It created a bubble. And now this bubble is, oh man, it is about to just do whatever it's about to do. But I mean, it's kind of too late now, right? A lot of these, you know, you hear about studios closing down, etc., etc. It's from this. It's coming from this.
Because they took on more staff contingents in terms of, you know, thinking that this was going to be the status quo moving forward, that COVID really was defining what, you know, sort of even the streaming platforms were looking like. Hence the reason, you know, Paramount Plus launched and lost like $7 billion, and then Disney Plus launched and lost 1 million subscribers within a month. And the same way, you know, studios started to swell, thinking that gaming was going to take off because everybody wasn't going to go to the movie theater and everybody was going to stay at home, play video games and watch Netflix.
But they knew it was going to end. They knew this was not sustainable. So, you know, that initial, you know, a lot of people want to make money from this. Like, quick in, quick out. And it's not good. And look, not all AAA studios or gaming studios or, you know, or investors have this type of approach. I mean, we still have, you know, studios going, look, no, we're not going to go this way, you know. But this is the thing, because they've bought a collection of game studios, that it seems like that they're all doing the same thing. When really, no, it was very strategic. It was very, you know, intentional. Just in terms of, let's get as many good studios as we can, right? Cash up front, and then we use their goodwill, their good currency, their good reputations, you know, to get, you know, a lot of investors to keep this thing alive until the game's release. But then
you're looking at like Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard for $68.7 billion.
Yeah.
And you know, this follows, you know, exactly what you're talking about.
How do you make that money back?
Because Microsoft just, you know, was having these conversations that, you know, there might not be a future Xbox because of, you know, because of Game Pass. And because the fact that, you know, most people are migrating to PC in order to take advantage of their Game Pass stuff. Because, you know, Game Pass is becoming, again, like it's becoming like that Fortnite, you know, don't own anything, just, you know, microtransactions and rent stuff.
Yeah, I saw it was PS5. I can't remember which company it is, but basically you can get a PS5 on credit. I'm like, I was like, what? Yo, that's, you know, so now you buy a PS5 on credit, Now you're worried that if you can't make your payment, someone's going to come to your house and be like, yo, give me that PS5 back. Oh my goodness.
It all stems from, I don't know if you remember this, but the Davos meeting that took place, where like the headline that came out of it was, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy.
Oh, yeah. WEF, nothing nonsense. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And that thing has haunted me for every type of interaction that I've had, including Right Up till Rebel Moon, where I'm like, oh, so what we're getting is these kind of watered down versions of what we would have gotten, but we have to be happy because we're not paying for it, you know, quote unquote paying for it. It's some sort of blanket payment that we're doing. We're on some sort of credit system where we're having content streamed to us and we should just be grateful. So it's like the idea that you'll never own your car, but, you'll just keep paying it off for the rest of your life.
No, it doesn't make sense. I mean,
it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's kind of like, what was that thing that happened with the Xbox, the D something, when they wanted to go digital ahead of time. So it's like, if you don't have internet, then tough titties, you can't.
Oh yeah, this was like really early part of like the digital sort of curbing piracy initiative. I think it was like DDRIM or something like that.
Yeah. I forget what it's called, but essentially it's kind of like, look, I like having a hard copy of the game so I can borrow it to people, and then also whenever I want to play it again, I'll play it. But now if it's on the internet only, right? What if I don't have internet, right? Let's say something happens to network down or whatever the case is, now I can't play that game. How does that make sense? That's not good. You don't get customer satisfaction from that, right? Mm-hmm. So they learned, and like, no, it's fine. We want to get rid of that. I think it was DRM, yeah.
DRM, that's what it was.
Yeah, and they learned from that, I think, but it still applies because this is not. It's not a gaming thing. This is a weird credit finance thing, where it's like, remember the arcades where you had to, when you ran out of coins, you couldn't play anymore.
Yeah.
It's a bit like that, except it's a bit more, I want to quote unquote sophisticated, but really it's kind of like, but this doesn't make sense for you as well. Like if I can't buy the games and then come back and buy the game some more and then have this loyalty towards you and your brand and what you're producing, what makes you think that I'm going to accept being beholden to you for a few rands or dollars or pounds per month and then feeling stressed about not being able to pay that? Like, no, that just seems like at some point you're just going to cut ties with the whole thing and something else is going to be birthed, right? Like you can see it already with like indie games and how those communities are rallying together and just going, hey, no, this is how things are done. Think about the whole GameStop situation. You heard about that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a great movie called Dumb Money with Paul Dano.
Yeah, yes.
Details the whole thing. I love that movie.
And just like, how do you guys not see this being a part of what you guys are doing? And you're like, you know what? Not my problem. But then you're like, man, it's crazy stupid, because it's like, I'm sure they can see it coming. It's just obviously, do we as consumers and players see it coming and happening? And I think for the most part, yeah. At some point, everybody, you're gonna boycott or stop doing. You've seen the Sweet Baby Inc. stuff where it's hilarious. There was a studio that denied or didn't explicitly put out that they've worked with Sweet Baby Inc. And then upon the people finishing the game, they discovered that Sweet Baby Inc. was a part of it, and it got boycotted into oblivion. And it's like, but you saw this coming, you knew this was going to happen. Why would you do this? This is not smart. And again, not every game developer studio is doing this, even big guns. So what's the one that did Baldur's Gate? That studio, Larian, they were like, look, no, we're never going to go down that path. We're just going to make a good game, the end, move on. And they cleaned up, right? They did good for themselves. Nintendo, they don't play those games. Nintendo is just like, no, we're going to do things our way, because the way we've been doing them, it's been very successful for us. It's been very good to us.
Yeah.
So Nintendo continues, to ride into the sunset. And then these, I don't know, AAA games. And, I don't want to talk about Ubisoft. I wish them the best of luck, but no. But then you get like, there's an indie game that shot up on my radar recently. It's called Humanity, right? I'll send you a link. It's a zombie survival game. Just shot up out of nowhere. I have been super happy about it because it sits in between these two games that I enjoy as well. One of them is State of Decay 2 from Microsoft, and the other one is Project Zomboid, right? You play these games and you're like, this is nice. Wouldn't it be nice if you could do this? Wouldn't it be nice if you could do this on either side? And then this game shows up. Indie developer, small team, I think there's maybe about 6-7 of them, right? And they've got this very, very good community that basically is like, yo, can you add this? Can you add this? And they listen to everything and they add it to the games. And the game is actually over the past 9 months, it's actually grown quite a bit just in terms of the actual game. And it's very good. And I'm like, like you're going to see this game succeed regardless, right?
Yeah.
They're going to do good in my opinion. And I'm like, but this is the formula that works. Why would you ignore that?
Yeah, it's the thing though, Charles, because, you said so many fascinating things, and it's so funny because we are right on the eve of like D23 has happened, which is sort of Disney's expo. But in addition to that, Disney invested $1.5 billion into Fortnite, right? Which I think sits at like $22 million in terms of like worth. And what is interesting is just before we started this podcast, Melissa was playing Fortnite and she was like, hey, there's this Disney event that's happening currently at Fortnite. So her and her squad kind of jump onto this thing, and literally it's like this investors meeting that takes place in the middle of the game where they're kind of presenting to the millions of people on Fortnite right now what their plans are in terms of Disney properties and kind of joining them up with what Fortnite is doing. And at some point, like, Melissa goes, why do I feel like I'm in a 3-hour corporate meeting? Like,
because they're obligated to do that, but they want to do it in a cool way because they're cool. Remember Ben Mendelsohn's character in Ready Player One?
Oh my God, this is what it reminded me of. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's, man. I don't like it being the focus because, again, like, there are good games, there are good studios, there are good investors, and, we'll catch them here and there, but, I mean, these guys go out of their way to market this so-called goodness that they're providing for you, but you kind of just like, no, like, I enjoy Fortnite for different reasons than what you paid for it, and they went and paid $1 billion, but it's worth only 22 million?
Yeah. 22 billion. I apologize. 22 billion.
22 billion.
Yeah.
Oh, man, my goodness. Okay. These numbers.
You know what?
They don't make sense to me.
They befuddle me. But this is the thing, though, because I think that, whenever I hear this, there's the quote from Nicolas Cage in Gone in 60 Seconds where he's like, yes, I saw 2 of these outside of, the Starbucks. You know what that tells me? That there's too much bloody people with too much bloody money who's buying a Ferrari, right? And he's like, but if I had a blah, 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 and he does this whole speech, it's like, that wouldn't make me a self-proclaimed yuppie, would it? And he's like, no, that would make you a connoisseur, sir.
Yes.
Just to kind of take my terrible quoting of that movie and distill it into another quote of another movie, which we've just mentioned, which is Dumb Money. I feel like games are scared to run through the lightning with their dick out. That's what the crazy thing is, because back in the day, games used to be so punk rock, man. Like when Mortal Kombat came out, you were like, oh, they don't care. They don't care about being like safe for investors. They want to cause a ruckus, And it was just like this, Rage Against the Machine fucking Beastie Boys song. That was playing when we were at the arcades, which was just like, no, say, and that's what we really enjoyed about what it was, which was a subculture. And then somewhere along the line, someone was like, hey, there's money to be made in this thing. And right now we're suffering from the types of content that we see.
Yeah, and it's so funny because now you mentioned dumb money, and this was the beautiful thing about the whole GameStop situation, where it was basically gamers going, no, we like GameStop. Let's invest in it. And they made money as investors. And on the opposite side, I don't know what they were thinking, just in terms of like, we're gonna run it into the ground, make a ton of money by doing this, and the second the other side makes money from it, doing what they were doing, they're like, oh yeah, no, this is not fair. What?
Yeah, and then they changed the rules. Charles. And this drives me insane because what's crazy about it, having grown up on games, is that, Melissa dabbles in quite a bit of Fortnite. In actual fact, she probably games more than I do, simply because I don't find that there are games that are centered around why I got into gaming any longer. I know that I'm incorrect. And I know that there's a lot of indie fare out there, and I know that you're quite the connoisseur of indie fare, and this is why I wanted to talk to you, was because I think that that's where it's at, right? That's where I should be dabbling. As much as like gamers invested into GameStop, I think that where gamers need to put their money now is much more into the indie fare. Because there's all these Chinese walls that have come up, like you mentioned DRM software, right? Or sort of the DRM stuff when it came to Microsoft. But like all of these free-to-play things, whether it's Call of Duty or Fortnite or, PUBG or whatever it is, there's a cost to all of it. And I'm not talking about like the far down the road cost. I mean, there was these skits that were coming out now that talked about like Call of Duty, having an install size of like 300 gigabytes. And they were like, what reason do you have to be that big? Back in the day when we got games, on Blu-rays, which were like 50 gigs with a bit of an install size, the problem is that as games are dabbling in these types of free-to-play spaces, you're paying through your hardware because you got to keep up with bigger hard drives and, sort of the march in terms of, sort of the technology that you have to keep up with is such a big ask these days. Because even with Fortnite, it's like Fortnite, particularly what I find is because both with my son and with Melissa, oftentimes the amount of bugs that come out from their machines just because of Fortnite is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's not like sustainable.
It's not sustainable because for me, like I'm constantly fixing their machines, whereas like, I don't play Fortnite on my machine and I use it primarily for, editing work and that type of stuff. I'm like, mine very rarely breaks down, but I'm just like the cost of these types of, how should I say? They're like fixes, right?
Yeah.
They're like drug fixes. This is how they're kind of on like it's like gaming on a drip feed, is what I like to call it, and it's terrifying for me. And even as a gamer, I watch it and I'm just like, I can't get into this. As much as I've tried and I've played in it, I don't have problems with the mechanics. I don't have problems with the experiences that people have. I think that those are genuine experiences. But I think that they're like big pharma, safe yet dangerous drugs. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah. It
where it's like I said, it's just like it's not like you're playing a game that challenges you. You said it, I believe, a couple of podcasts ago. When you engage with good art, that art changes you somehow. And with these types of experiences, it's not about changing you. It's just about delivering vicarious thrills to you in bigger and better fashion constantly. And you become more numb and more cauterized, because what is fascinating about this is that when this kind of stock D23 event happened in Fortnite, I watched kind of with my mouth ajar, because I was like, this is happening in a game. Like, I would never in my wildest dreams, my like teenage self would never have thought that this would be something of a reality. where games are taken so seriously that there is a company which is literally doing an event within a freaking game engine. And like, it's unheard of.
It's not even like the concert that they did. It's like, what made you think that was a good idea? It's nuts. And to something you said just now, just in terms of like, there's not games that are catered to you. I saw something from PlayStation Access. You know those guys.
I'm not familiar with PlayStation Access.
PlayStation Access, it's a channel from the UK. They basically are PlayStation's go-to guys, and they do a wonderful job. Like they are fantastic. They're hilarious. There was a video Rob did. Rob is one of the presenters. He's been a mainstay since they started, I think. And he basically does these lists every week of, from gaming specifically towards PlayStation. And he did one recently about 7 things that gamers over 30 will understand, right? And it's like this amalgamation of not enough time as well as too much information, too many options, too many games to play. And, I saw it and I had a good laugh. I'll send you the link. And, I was like, oh man, I completely understand being of the same generation, a similar generation. And after that, I kind of, reflected on, what, he's so right. And I was a little bit somber just in terms of, there's so much that I want to play that, there's not enough time in the day to do them, etc., etc. But then I thought to myself, like, even if I'm not playing the games because maybe there's not enough things for me specifically, and I have to wait for my specific goodness, right? If I'm waiting for the next GTA or the next Final Fantasy, what do I get excited about? And this is when the indie space comes in, where I'm so excited for them, because I find that even though I might not be able to play a game that day, right, I'm still very much interested in certain games that I know that, like, I won't have the time to play it, but I want to see this game succeed. And there's a few indie games that do this. And so, I follow them, I pay attention to their journey, and it's quite fascinating because I find myself feeling very, optimistic and enthusiastic and excited about, hey, I want to see this game succeed. So I don't usually have like notifications on my socials because I'm like, there's no ways you're going to catch me at like 2 a.m. in the morning responding to a notification for a stream. Mm-hmm. However, I'm like, wait a minute, I want to see this specific indie game when they release something. Like, I want to see this notification. I trust that they actually enjoy making games and they want people to enjoy playing their games. So I pay attention to that. So now I'm in this weird space where it's like, but I'm not playing the game. Am I allowed to enjoy this experience? Am I allowed to enjoy the success of this game, even though I'm going through this gamer over 30 situation? And the answer was yes. It's part of the experience. Where, you know what, I know that it might take me about a month or 2 before I get to this game, because I want to finish certain games ahead of time. But I think Walid might enjoy this game. Let me recommend it to him. Yeah. And then boom, somebody starts playing this game. And, it's like, oh, wow. He's playing this game and he's enjoying this game, and that game is getting successful, etc., etc. Because I find that the difference between, let's say, AAA games and indie games is what they succeed of and what they actually care about, right? So you find that indie developers, they rely a lot on their communities and their creativity, as one should. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, have you played this game? Which game? Mortal Kombat. What's Mortal Kombat? Right? Yeah. Word of mouth. Now we're talking and you go play a game, comes back and it grows and grows. Whereas AAA, in my opinion, will rely a lot on, credit, money coming in, even if it's not yours, and sales, right? The game has to be good and then the game has to sell. And then after, costs have been tallied, then you get your product. So what they'll do is they push all these other stuff to get money in quickly, or the idea that money's coming in quickly, and it's like, where's the creativity? Where's the communities? And past that, with indie games, even if I'm not playing them, the communities that surround really good indie games, I found maybe 1 or 2 or 3 that are absolutely phenomenal. And, you know, it keeps you in the game, right? So let's say you and I, we have these conversations here and there in parking lots, you know, over WhatsApp or over Zoom, right? And it's part of the community, right? And it's so weird how now you can immediately tell, with like AAA games and indie games, which communities are essentially going to keep which games alive. And it's like, I would advise, if I may, in terms of indie games, like, even if you're not necessarily interested in that game, to pay attention to that community and to those games. Because you mentioned once upon a time Subnautica, right? I think you got it for your son, and it was a game that I touched on, right? I couldn't finish it because it's a survival game and I need to commit to those survival games, right? But I was so happy when you mentioned it, because I'm like, oh, I know that game. I hope he enjoys it. And I went out of my way and I started watching streams about it and, you know, tutorials, so that the second I do play it again, I don't have to go through the stumbling blocks that I would usually go through. And it was so fascinating because I feel like I know a lot about this game. And because I have some sort of foundation for it, I'm excited to play it, because I'm like, oh, I can't wait to do this. I can't wait to do that. Whereas with AAA games, I don't feel I have that same experience anymore, unless it's obviously something that's I know I'm committed to, loyal to, you know the big ones, etc.
Yeah, absolutely, because those big ones got there because of loyalty. You know, you don't get a Last of Us if you don't have a Crash Bandicoot. You know what I'm saying? It's just like those games were built on, you know, sort of the love of Jack and Daxter, you know, all of those things, you know, sort of, you know, Insomniac coming from Ratchet and Clank, and coming from, you know, you get Sucker Punch, you get Infamous, all of these different games. You know, even like Prototype, which was kind of like the direct competition for Infamous. And I always thought that, you know, the competition between like, you know, Sony and Microsoft, or Nintendo and Sega, always produced such great pieces of entertainment for people, for the audiences. You know, we got Gears of War because of like the PS3 and the Xbox 360, really, you know, trying to compete for, you know, the attention of the audience. You got Uncharted because of that, you know, because you needed the killer IP, right? And it's something that, look, perhaps gaming has moved on from my tastes to the point that I have to cultivate new tastes in order to enjoy them. And, you know, I'm always looking to you to suggest new games to me. But, you know, as you were talking, my mind, you know, you lit up so many great memories I have about games. One in particular, which I hinted at last week, but it's to speak about the stock and value of games. It's always about the context that you find that particular game in. I've told you about sort of how I encountered Metal Gear Solid, but there was one game in particular from sort of the Sega Mega Drive era of games, right, which was called Cyber Police eSWAT.
Cyber Police eSWAT, oh my goodness.
eSWAT, yeah. And most people listening to me will either go, I remember that game, and other people will be like, whatever, boomer. You know what I'm saying? Like, shut up, you old man. Take your pills. But here's the thing. The reason I remember that game as much as why I remember it's another of my favorites is because I'll never forget the way that I got that game. So what had happened was a really good friend of mine that I had grown up for like 30 years with, probably even 35 years at this point. He since moved to Portugal. And he and I would be together all the time, and there was one particular instance where somebody had borrowed a game from him, and they didn't return it. right? Remember back in the day, you'd borrow a game to somebody and you'd be like, cool, I'll get it from you on this day. He didn't return it. And so he came to me and he was like, look, this dude isn't returning my game. And, we paid X amounts of money for it. And I was like, cool, let's go and find him. So we go knock on this dude's door. And he sees us and he goes through the window. Right?
Yeah.
I swear to God, this is not a made-up story. He goes through the window. We chase him throughout the whole neighborhood, jumping over like walls, and the dogs chasing us, and we're shouting at him because at this point we think, okay, cool, he's stolen the game, right? And he doesn't want to give it back. So we chase him and we lose him at some point. And my friend says to me, he goes, "Oh man, like when we catch him at school, we're gonna smash him," right? So we get to school and this dude offers up this olive branch before we can get to him. And he's like, dude, please just take this game. Like, I lost your game and that's why I ran away. Like, I borrowed it to somebody else. Because that's what would happen back in the day.
Yes.
You would borrow a game and that person would borrow it to somebody else. And that game went on its own, its own journey.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You'd
be like, yeah, I've got this game. I played this game. Oh, man, can I borrow it? You'd be like, nah, I'm not sure. Please, come on, man. I'll bring back this. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they never get back. It's basically like cigarettes in prison. That's basically how we grew up. And what happened was he offered up Cyber Police Eastwood.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
And my friend at the time was like, dude, like, I don't want this game. I want the game I gave you, right? And he gave me the game and he's like, why don't you go try this out? And I go back home and I still remember like the sound of the menu, the voiceover that happens. And I was like, this is fascinating. And to some degree, I think that it had some bearing on my inspiration around the types of stories that I dream of. Because, that era was very much left to your imagination. But the beautiful thing about that is that I appreciate the game because there's a story attached to it. There's a story about it.
Oh, man, this is wonderful because I've also... Two just popped up in my head. One is a Final Fantasy one, but I'm gonna stick with Skyrim. Because Skyrim, I had just got back into gaming after like a 4-year hiatus, right? So 4 years, no games, and then next generation of games shows up. Gears of War advert, Xbox, right? I'm like, oh, what is going on? What have I been doing in these past 4 years? Fast forward to one of the Game of the Year awards. I'm not sure which year it was. 2016, 2015, around there. And Skyrim is just getting all this attention and accolades. What is this Skyrim stuff, right? And then I see trailers and I let it go because I wasn't really, clued up onto Skyrim and Bethesda and all that stuff. And I'm just like, but yo, man, that looks interesting. They had that orchestra, they had the soundtrack, and I'm just like, oh, sounds fascinating, all right? But I move on because in the back of my head, I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'll get to it when I get to it. And I have a friend, and for like 2 years, like, we were we were FIFA addicts.
Yeah.
Right? I had to retire from FIFA because I can't get anything done when I play FIFA. Till this day, I'm like, I'm not interested in that addictive stuff. And one day, his brother-in-law comes home and he's got a PS3. He's like, yo, you play this stuff? So obviously he's like, yo, come, give it here, right? There was a PS3 and 3 games. One of them was an F1 game, if I remember correctly, and the other one I don't even remember, but then I remember seeing Skyrim. And my mind went into, drumroll please, Zack Snyder slow motion mode. Just like, what is going on here? I know this game, but I haven't played it. But now I'm super interested. But I'm like, it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask him to play it, or I'm gonna play it when I get a chance. All right. I had my PS3 at the time, but I just wanted to play Skyrim. I'm just like, okay, here's the opportunity, right? At some point, I'm even gonna ask him, can I borrow this for a bit, right? So then, a few weeks, and at some point, I'm like, you know what? Actually, I'm like, yo, can I borrow this for like a week? I just want to test it out. I think it's very interesting. He looks at me, he's like, did you play this? You play this stuff? I'm like, yeah. It's like, yeah, I'm not interested in this at all. Yeah, take it, it's yours. Yo. In my mind, that's what's going on, but I'm playing it cool. I'm like, all right, cool, man, thanks, you know. And on the drive home, you know, when you're just like, get out of the way. You know, installing the game and just waiting for that, you know, that 88%, 92%, hurry up, right? And it installs, and I'm like, why am I in such a rush? You said I could have it, whatever the case is, but this is the thing. Now I'm excited to play this game, right? And I will never forget, because you go through the character creation and then the game starts. And it was one of the opening, I've never experienced this opening of a game, just in terms of the back of the card and the conversation. And I'm just like, two things happened in my mind at the time when that opening happened, where I'm like, I wanted to play this game. You know, I thought it would be good and experience it. Now I'm experiencing it and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm playing this game. Is it really that good? Or is it just me enjoying this thing? And I'm like, no, man, this is not normal. This is not normal. This is very good. Right? So I'm playing Skyrim. I'm enjoying Skyrim. I get as far as I can with Skyrim, because Skyrim is obviously one of those side quest games where you just get lost in it. So when I finally come back into the living world and start checking up on, like, oh, Skyrim, I had no idea I wasn't the only one. It still is that good. Right? In spite of all the remasters, the HD remakes, you know, all that stuff. I'm like, no, man, Skyrim. But I remember that story because it was kind of like, I'll never forget it. Yo, you play this? Yeah, take it, it's yours. Oh.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. But you mentioned something interesting there, and I think it's a topic for another podcast, because we started this podcast talking about sort of Zack Snyder, and we started talking about sort of, you know, sort of death of the death of cinematic curiosity, the death of AAA games, the sort of birth of indie games. But what's interesting is, you know, I'm actually reading a couple of headlines right now because they're talking about the Schumacher cut of Batman Forever. It was just something that came out of San Diego Comic-Con, which is quite fascinating. We've got an Interstellar re-release that's happening in December. And then we've got a Zack Snyder-inspired Rebel Moon podcast starring Ella Purnell from Fallout, which is going to expand on the franchise. So in the sort of maelstrom that we find ourselves, where we've kind of got this revival house of cinema, where we've got remakes and HD remakes of video games in order to keep the doors of studios open. We've got all these types of cuts hitting our platforms in terms of Snyder cuts and Schumacher cuts and air cuts of Suicide Squad. And then we've also got all of these remakes of films that are happening and franchises being built.
Yeah.
What are some of your recommendations of independent games that you believe that every person should play? So you've mentioned Humanity Z.
Humanity, yeah. So
Humanity.
Yeah.
You've mentioned Project Zomboid. What are some of the others?
Ooh, okay. I need to open up my Steam real quickly. Oh my goodness. Independent games. So there's one that I played that I still need to finish now. Give me a sec.
No worries.
What is it saying? It's not reopening. Why?
Because it is Steam. This is why.
Okay. All right. Cool. So, in terms of my favorite, I think I've recommended some of these to you before. Bastion.
Yes.
From Supergiant Games. Also Hades from Supergiant Games. I think it's quite amazing. The one that I'm currently ignoring that I should be finishing is called Undying. Zombie stuff. That's indie game goodness. And then it's a kind of a big indie game that is oldie. If you haven't played it, I don't know if you're into this, but I know that if you haven't played it, you might be interested in it. Pillars of Eternity. Yeah, it's called
title.
Yeah, it's RPG goodness. Like I'm still not that good at these type of RPGs. However, I do enjoy this idea. This is kind of like what I thought Dungeons and Dragons was about. I had no idea Dungeons and Dragons was about books and dices and imagination.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I also thought that Dungeons and Dragons was somewhat different from what I discovered the reality of it is.
Yeah.
I think it's my gamer brain. My gamer brain was like, "Oh, that sounds fascinating," and then when I discovered it's die and cards and imagination, I was like, "Hold on a second."
Yeah. So I respect Dungeons and Dragons because of what it's created,
Yes.
in going forward in life and stuff. But I think those ones should be good for now.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. Good, Sir Charles.
Wait. There's one more.
Yes.
There's one more.
Ooh, yes. Go first.
Holy potatoes were in space.
I love it. What is that about?
Man, like if you love puns, in terms of puns, Holy potatoes in space. Basically, these two sisters are on this journey to find their grandfather, but they're potatoes, or I don't know what the potato family is like, but it's full of puns. It's check it out. I'll send you a link and I'll send you a trailer. It's.
Oh, dude! And then I must make mention of a particular game that still sits near and dear in my heart, which is I have to bring it up. It is just one of those things that for me, in terms of puns and in terms of humor, it has to be right at the top of the list. It stars a character by the name of Guybrush Threepwood, and it is The Secret of Monkey Island.
Secret of Monkey Island. Oh, okay. I've never actually played, but I know it. Okay.
I walk up to my nephew and my son often, and I say, "How are you doing, you scruffy-looking pirate people?" And they look at me as if I am from the Stone Age.
Oh,
because they're just like, "What are you talking about?" I try to get my son to play it, but I made this promise that even before I had a kid, I was like, what I'm going to do is that when I do have a kid, and I do, then I was going to take them through different eras of video games. And I actually thought about it quite recently, and I've actually stuck to that particular promise. And what's interesting, I just introduced my son to Street Fighter. Obviously not like Street Fighter 1, but I introduced him to Street Fighter 4 because I think that's kind of like a good middle ground for the two of us in terms of graphical fidelity and in terms of, sort of some of the more legacy types of things that I'm fond of.
Respect.
And that's where he is right now. But in you mentioning this, I'm definitely going to suggest that he play Holy Potatoes Were in Space.
Oh, okay.
And I think the next thing is I think they made a remake of it in actual fact, which is
yes.
Secret of Monkey Island.
Yeah. If I can add just one more.
Yes.
This one is from our friend Peter Molyneux.
Yeah. Peter Molyneux from Black and White.
He is amazing in so many ways. Yes, Fable 2.
Lovely.
Myself, my younger brother, and my sister, we still quote this game. There's a line in that game. I'm not gonna say it. However, I think that one you and your family might enjoy.
Oh, that's going to be amazing. We're going to make a day of it because I'll tell you this, kid. So we got to get away from the fortnight. We got to escape to the mountains or to some sort of secret place, set up some sort of local land setup, and actually, play games that matter.
Very good. Very good.
And I think that will create some more stories of the games we play.
Yes.
If you don't mind me saying.